This is the Daily Market Share, and I am Hector Luis Calderon Victoria, and this is the UC Santa Cruz Center for Agroecology in partnership with USDA's Southwest Regional Food Business Center. Podcasts covering the field of California agriculture and how small farmers, ranchers, producers, and food enterprises are building resilience and success in the marketplace. To learn more, check us out at agroecology.ucsc.edu. In this episode, we'll be deep diving into some recent news that has come down from the United States Department of Agriculture, also known as USDA, which will be an AI-generated podcast that's been combing through recent press releases, federal announcements, and media updates about a major shift in how small farms and food businesses are supported across the country. As of last week, the United States Department of Agriculture confirmed that all 12 of its regional food business centers launched in 2023 to strengthen local food systems will officially shut down, including the Southwest Center, serving California, Arizona, Nevada, and Utah. Led by UC Agriculture and Natural Resources, also known as UCANR, and powered by a coalition of 21 partners, has been a crucial support system for small farms and food entrepreneurs. But with operations winding down and no new funding on the horizon, many are now asking, what happens next? In this episode, we explore how the unexpected decisions affect the future of resilient regional food systems and what farmers, entrepreneurs, and local institutions are doing to keep that momentum alive. Tune in as we explore what this means and what could come next.
Okay, let's unpack this. Today, we're diving deep into a recent, pretty significant development from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, specifically the termination of a program called the Regional Food Business Centers. Now, this isn't just about, government policy and dense acronyms. It's really about connecting the dots, connecting those high-level decisions made, back in D.C. and their very real, tangible impact. We're talking about local farms, small food businesses, and entire rural communities right across the country. So our mission for this deep dive is to guide you through the whole intricate story of this program. We'll explore its origins, try to understand the ambitious goals it set out to achieve, and then, look at its early achievements. But maybe most critically, we'll delve into the reasons given for its abrupt cancellation. And we'll contrast those official justifications with the often, frankly, heartbreaking experiences of those on the ground, the people directly involved. You'll hear how this single policy decision sends these major ripples through communities, affecting everything from, say, bison processing on tribal lands in Minnesota, to critical kitchen expansions in Fargo, North Dakota, and really what this means for the future of localized food systems.
What's truly fascinating here is that the regional food business centers, or RFBCs as they became known, they weren't just another generic government initiative that kind of appeared out of nowhere. No, they were conceived and implemented at a very specific, very critical moment in time, born out of a stark, explicit understanding of some profound vulnerabilities in our national food system. Vulnerabilities the pandemic just laid bare. As the USDA itself noted in its official communication, this was explicitly a pandemic-era Biden program created with one-time temporary funding from Congress. Okay. And that context is just crucial because it tells us this wasn't envisioned as, a permanent ongoing budget item, not something phased in over decades. It was meant as a targeted, urgent response to an immediate and, frankly, unprecedented crisis. The idea was to inject capital and expertise quickly where it was most needed, acknowledging a systemic fragility that, demanded immediate attention.
Right. And while that initial funding was temporary, designed as that rapid injection of support you mentioned, the intent behind the program, as reported meticulously by Civil Eats and others in the ag news space, was really to tackle some long-standing, deeply entrenched issues, problems that have plagued our food system for decades. We're talking about the relentless, increasing consolidation in the food system that has hollowed out rural communities. That's a persistent, sort of insidious problem. This consolidation means, fewer larger players controlling more and more of the food supply chain, from seed to grocery store. And often that's at the expense of local producers and local economies. Think about those small towns where the local slaughterhouse closed years ago, or maybe the last independent grocery store got replaced by a massive chain. It leaves farmers with fewer options and communities with less access to fresh local food. And critically, the program was also about the urgent need to rebuild regional supply chains after the profound shocks of the COVID-19 pandemic. I mean, the pandemic didn't just expose fragility, it shattered it in many ways. Remember those images? Farmers plowing under crops because processing plants were closed?
Oh, absolutely.
Or milk being dumped because distribution channels were just gone while grocery store shelves were bare elsewhere.
Yeah.
That chaos really underscored how brittle our national, highly centralized food networks could be, especially when they rely on just a few centralized points for processing, packaging, distribution.
Yeah.
Precisely. And this highlights a fundamental goal that ran much deeper than just a pandemic response, really. The program aimed to actively push back against what's been the prevailing ideology in American agriculture for decades, the get big or get out farm economy. This philosophy, which got really strong in the latter half of the 20th century, it favored industrial scale, commodity-focused agriculture. And that often led to smaller, diversified farms just struggling to compete or being forced out altogether. The consequences were clear. A massive reduction in the number of farms, particularly those mid-sized operations, and a significant loss of local economic control and diversity in rural areas. So by creating these RFBCs, the program actively sought to strengthen what's often called the mid-tier of the food system, those small to medium-sized farms and food businesses. They're not huge industrial operations, but they're absolutely vital for local economies, often focused on direct-to-consumer sales or specialized products or serving local institutions like schools or hospitals. The idea was to foster local wealth and resilience by investing in these regional infrastructures, make communities more self-sufficient, less dependent on fragile long-distance supply chains, and empower them to retain more of the economic value generated by their own agricultural output. It was a strategic effort to diversify, decentralize, and de-risk our food production and distribution networks.
So how is this ambitious vision, this push against decades of consolidation, how was it supposed to actually become a reality on the ground? The blueprint was, I think, fairly ingenious in its distributed approach. The program allocated roughly $360 million, which is a substantial sum for a targeted initiative like this, to establish 12 regional food business centers strategically located across the country. And it's important for you to understand these weren't just new federal outposts staffed by, USDA employees in every region.
No, not at all.
Instead, they were designed to be deeply embedded within existing local organizations, entities like established agricultural nonprofits, land-grant universities, or regional development commissions. These organizations, already familiar with their local agricultural landscape and community needs, were tasked with being the hubs of business development activity.
Mm-hmm.
This decentralized approach was absolutely key, tailoring the support to unique regional needs, whether that was, say, developing a specialty crop market in the Pacific Northwest or supporting livestock processing in the Midwest.
And their role was truly multifaceted. It went far beyond just simple financial aid. These centers were designed to provide comprehensive, hands-on support, which is a critical distinction. They offered technical assistance to farmers and food entrepreneurs. And this wasn't just generic advice you could, find online. Imagine a small organic farm looking to scale up their direct-to-consumer sales. The RFBCs would connect them with experts on crafting, say, compelling online storefronts, or understanding the nuances of perishable shipping logistics.
Which are incredibly complex.
Oh, absolutely. Or even navigating the complexities of organic certification paperwork, highly specialized guidance that most small operations simply can't afford or find on their own. Or maybe for a nascent food processor, it might be about deciphering the labyrinthine FDA or state health regulations for a new product line. Getting HACCP certified for food safety, or optimizing their cold storage management and distribution routes. These are all critical, often overwhelming barriers to entry for local producers hoping to expand. They also distributed capacity building awards. These were grants specifically designed to help businesses invest in physical infrastructure or expand their operational capabilities. Things like a new piece of processing equipment or an upgraded cold storage unit. Crucially, they work to coordinate services to catalyze the growth of regional food economies, acting as sort of matchmakers and navigators. Think of it almost like a USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service agent, those vital folks who provide crucial, on-the-ground scientific and technical help to farmers.
Right, helping them manage their land more sustainably.
Yes, exactly. Maybe understanding their specific soil profiles or advising on water conservation. Well, these food business centers were designed to offer a similar, localized, deep dive support, but specifically tailored for market access and business development within the food system, connecting producers with processors, distributors, and ultimately consumers in a way that had become severely fragmented and lost due to, well, decades of consolidation. It was really about creating a robust, interconnected ecosystem of support tailored to local needs.
And a really crucial component of this highly customized model was the issuance of those business builder grants. These were relatively small subgrants, often, in the tens of thousands of dollars, designed to provide direct financial assistance to individual farms and food entrepreneurs. They were meant to be catalytic, helping bridge funding gaps for projects that might be too small for traditional bank loans, but maybe too large for a farmer's personal savings. But what truly set this program apart, I think, and aligned with its broader social and equity goals, was its explicit aim to reach farmers and food businesses that historically face significant barriers in accessing traditional USDA programs and services. A key focus.
Yeah, this included groups like small, diversified farms, which often don't fit neatly into that large commodity agriculture framework that dominates federal support, and notably Black farmers who faced past discrimination. This intentional focus was meant to address systemic inequities. For generations, Black farmers, for instance, have faced discriminatory lending practices, land dispossession, unequal access to federal resources. It's a long history, a very painful history.
Exactly. This program aimed to directly counter that by proactively engaging with and funding these historically marginalized groups, ensuring that the benefits of strengthening the food system were felt by those who had been systematically excluded, helping to rebuild trust and create more equitable opportunities within agriculture. Now, what's genuinely striking here, and maybe a bit counterintuitive given the timeline, is that despite the 5-year grant agreements for these centers only being finalized in 2023, they were truly in their very earliest stages of implementation.
Just getting off the ground, really.
Yeah, the program appears to have very quickly begun demonstrating tangible results. We're talking about a relatively short time frame from activation to measurable impact, which is, pretty remarkable for a government program of this scope.
Indeed. A progress report from the Biden USDA, released back in October 2024, showcased some pretty impressive metrics that really speak to the early momentum and, frankly, effectiveness of these centers. The report indicated that 2,800 individuals had already received technical assistance. Think about that for a moment. In just a year or so, thousands of farmers and food entrepreneurs gained specific, tailored guidance on everything from navigating food safety regs to developing a viable business plan.
That's huge.
It is. Furthermore, recipients had formed 1,500 new partnerships. Now, these aren't just abstract numbers. These are concrete connections being forged between producers, processors, distributors, aggregators, the very links needed to, as you said, rebuild regional supply chains and create more resilient local food systems. And perhaps most importantly, 287 businesses reported increased revenue directly as a result of the program's support,
Wow.
signifying real economic growth and new opportunities being created right there on the ground. These figures suggest the program wasn't just, active. It was already delivering on its core objectives, rapidly translating its vision into real-world impact.
And to give you a concrete example that brings those numbers to life, let's look at the Northwest and Rocky Mountain Regional Food Business Center. This one serves states like Colorado, Wyoming, and Idaho. In its very first year of operation, this center reported that its technical assistance programs helped establish 30 new companies.
30 new businesses.
Yeah, imagine that 30 entirely new businesses springing up, contributing to local economies, directly benefiting from that tailored support and expertise from the center. Beyond that, 50 farms and businesses that directly worked with the center saw increased sales. One particularly striking example highlighted was a dairy farm that quadrupled its sales through Wyoming's food freedom markets.
Quadrupled. That's transformative.
Absolutely. Directly benefiting from the pathways, market access, connections fostered by the center. This isn't just incremental growth. Quadrupling sales can make a small farm far more sustainable. This success really captures that vision articulated by former Ag Secretary Tom Vilsack, who wanted to create additional market opportunities so that mid and small-size operators still have a chance of staying in the business. It vividly demonstrates the direct impact on making smaller operations not just viable, but actually thriving within a broader food system that often marginalizes them.
So, what does this all mean for a program that was showing such clear promise, delivering on its initial goals with such rapid momentum? Unfortunately, that momentum came to an incredibly abrupt halt. Civil Eats, which is a leading independent news org focused on the food system, they reported that organizations operating all 12 of these business centers had their funding frozen, effectively since January 2025.
Right when the administration changed.
Exactly. This critical date aligns precisely with when the Trump administration took office. From that point, the USDA simply stopped paying grantees for any work done after that specific date. Imagine receiving a substantial grant, signing a multi-year contract, making commitments to staff, renting facilities, putting resources into action, and then having payments for your ongoing contracted work just stop without clear communication or a formal explanation for months.
Exactly. Imagine being one of those centers, or maybe a farm or food business relying on funds flowing from them, in the middle of a vital project, and suddenly those payments are on hold with no clear end in sight. The centers were left, as the report said, struggling to function as they sought answers from the USDA, unable to pay staff, honor subcontracts, or move forward with planned initiatives.
Just paralyzed.
Completely. This created significant, paralyzing uncertainty, not just for the centers themselves, but for all the farmers and businesses they were supporting. And this happened long before the official termination was even announced in July. This funding freeze back in January was, in essence, the first real crack in the foundation of the program, signaling deep trouble and putting everyone involved in this impossible position, continuing work without the promised resources, often forcing them to incur debt or simply halt operations. It really highlights how vulnerable these types of initiatives can be to sudden administrative shifts, even before formal policy changes are made.
Right. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the official hammer finally dropped on July 15th, 2025. On that date, U.S. Secretary of Agriculture Brooke L. Rollins officially announced the termination of the Regional Food Business Centers program.
The final word.
The definitive, public end to what had been a program designed to foster local food economies and strengthen regional supply chains. It marked a clear shift in federal agricultural policy.
And the secretary's statement cited what she framed as, well, clear, compelling reasons for the decision. She stated, and I'm quoting here, the Biden administration created multiple, massive programs without any long-term way to finance them. Quote, this is not sustainable for farmers who rely on these programs, and it flies in the face of congressional intent.
Strong words.
Very. She didn't mince words, adding that the department was terminating this program that should not have been established in this manner in the first place.
Quote.
So the core argument was firmly rooted in fiscal sustainability and the notion of adhering to what was perceived as the original legislative intent for that temporary one-time funding. She seemed to suggest that creating programs with temporary funds but implying long-term impact was, well, misleading to farmers and a misuse of congressional direction.
To be fair, the USDA did make a point to clarify their commitment regarding existing obligations. They tried to mitigate immediate fallout. Secretary Rollins stated that they will honor existing commitments for over 450 grants to farmers and food businesses to ensure planning decisions on the farm can continue as normal.
Okay, so some reassurance there.
Some. It was intended to provide some reassurance that projects already underway, which had received formal commitments, wouldn't be immediately abandoned. However, the message for the future was equally, if not more, clear and stark. Stakeholders should not plan on this program continuing.
Right.
And any remaining funds, after honoring those 450 plus existing grants, would be repurposed to better support American agriculture through other unspecified avenues.
Right.
So while some current projects might be seen through to completion, the door for future regional food business center support through this specific mechanism and its underlying philosophy, that door was firmly closed. It sends a very strong signal to the agricultural community about the future direction of federal support.
Now, the termination isn't a clean cut across the board for all centers, which adds another layer of complexity and, frankly, confusion. The USDA announced what amounts to a two-tiered approach to winding down the program. Out of the original 12 RFBCs, only 8 had actually selected or issued those business builder grants by the time of the official termination. So for those 8 centers, there's a different path forward than for the remaining 4.
Indeed. Centers that had not yet made business builder commitments, specifically identified as the Great Lakes Midwest RFBC, Southeast RFBC, Delta RFBC, and Islands and Remote Areas RFBC, those were terminated immediately.
They're stopped.
Their operations effectively ceased on the day of the announcement, meaning any plans they had for future grants or technical assistance simply evaporated. For the 8 centers that had executed or announced business builder subwards, they will have the option to continue managing those existing commitments through May 2026. This bifurcated approach, it raises an important question for us to consider.
Yeah, why hadn't those 4 centers awarded grants yet?
Exactly. Was it genuinely due to slow progress on their part? A lack of capacity? Or was there another, perhaps more external factor at play that prevented them from reaching that stage? It's a critical detail because it speaks directly to the narrative surrounding the program's efficiency or lack thereof.
Well, that's where a crucial detail from Civil Eats, citing an anonymous USDA source, really challenges the official narrative and the justifications provided for those immediate terminations. This source indicated that the centers terminated immediately would have already awarded grants but were unable to do so due to the funding freeze that, as we discussed, began way back in January.
The freeze again.
If this anonymous source is accurate, it paints a very different picture. It suggests that the reason for those 4 centers not having awarded grants might not have been a lack of progress or capability on their part at all, but rather an imposed barrier, a direct consequence of the administrative halt on payments that effectively tied their hands.
Makes sense if they couldn't pay staff or partners.
How could they finalize and disperse grants? If that's the case, it really casts doubt on the justification for terminating those specific centers immediately. The USDA also mentioned in its official statement that a relatively small number of grants had been awarded overall due to the broad scope and long setup process, which seems to conflict, or at least sit awkwardly, with their simultaneous commitment to honor over 450 grants.
Yeah, that number, 450, doesn't sound relatively small in context.
Exactly. This discrepancy certainly leaves us with questions about the exact scope, scale, and the true reasons behind what's being honored versus what's being canceled. It casts a shadow of uncertainty over the official explanation. Okay, so moving beyond the policy papers, beyond the official statements, let's get to the actual ground truth. Let's truly unpack what this bureaucratic language of termination and existing commitments actually translates to for the individuals and communities who are literally counting on these programs. Because it's one thing to talk about high-level policy, it's another entirely to witness its human impact, the disruption of livelihoods, the shattering of trust.
It's a very real and often devastating impact. Consider the story of Petra and David Wise, co-owners of Native Wise LLC in Minnesota.
Yeah.
They had recently added bison to their farm, which was, as you mentioned, a deeply meaningful step for them, bringing the animals back to tribal lands after 150 years.
More than just farming.
Much more. It was about cultural reclamation, economic self-determination for their community. Their significant challenge, however, was practical. Processing facilities for bison were located 4 hours away, creating a major logistical and financial hurdle that made direct-to-consumer sales nearly impossible. This is where the North Central USDA Regional Food Business Center stepped in. They awarded them a $50,000 business builder grant specifically to purchase an industrial cooler freezer. As Petra Wise explained, and her words really highlight the direct utility, we wouldn't be able to do the farm-to-consumer processing without that type of a freezer. This equipment was absolutely foundational for their ability to process their own meat on-site, ensure quality, reduce transport costs, and sell directly and sustainably to their community.
But, and this is where that funding freeze just hits so hard, after purchasing this essential, expensive piece of equipment, their remaining funds from the grant, what they needed for other critical steps, like maybe further processing equipment or marketing efforts, those were put on hold back in January.
Just stop midstream.
Imagine that. You've made a significant capital investment based on a signed contract, and suddenly the remaining funds you planned on are gone, or at least totally inaccessible. Petra Wise's words resonate so deeply with the frustration, the sense of betrayal many felt. You sign a contract, and then you're trusting the government that they're going to honor their end. For a small farm, that's life or death, basically, for the business.
Chilling words. Life or death.
That single sentence truly crystallizes the immense vulnerability that so many of these small producers operate under. It's not just about a delayed payment, it's about the very survival of their livelihood, often built on generations of painstaking effort. So while their essential cooler freezer is now in place, their plans for further expansion, for truly maximizing the potential of their bison operation and securing its long-term viability, are now completely in limbo.
They have part of the puzzle, but can't complete the picture.
Exactly. And that uncertainty is just a crushing burden.
And the impact isn't confined to individual awardees like the Rises. It extends throughout the entire regional food ecosystem. It really illustrates how these centers were indeed building the connective tissue that local supply chains rely on. Take another example from that same North Central Center. A grant awarded to a kitchen facility in Fargo, North Dakota. This facility was actively expanding its base, adding new commercial kitchen units, specialized equipment.
Like a food hub incubator.
It's exactly. This expansion would have enabled countless more farms and small food businesses in the area to cook, process, package their products right there, making them market ready for local grocery stores, restaurants, farmers markets, you name it. When the payments for that grant paused, so did this ripple effect. The expansion halted, construction crews were likely idled, and the potential for countless other small businesses to access that vital shared infrastructure was just stifled. This demonstrates quite clearly that it's not just about the awardee, it's about everyone around them, too.
Yeah.
Without that central processing hub, dozens of smaller producers lose their pathway to market. It highlights just how interconnected these local food systems truly are, and how a disruption at one point can cascade through the entire chain.
And the centers themselves, the organizations actually tasked with running these RFBCs, they're facing immense operational pressure and, well, heartbreaking decisions. Cheryl Lee Hills, who is the executive director of the Region 5 Development Commission, that's the organization running the North Central Center, she had to make some incredibly tough choices. She had to cancel 31 subcontracts to various partner organizations. These partners were providing critical technical assistance across Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota.
31 contracts. That's huge.
It is. These partners were local experts, university extensions, community groups, providing highly specialized services, food safety training, marketing assistance, and the real human cost of that. Some of those organizations, she said, had no choice but to lay off staff who were dedicated to supporting local food economies.
People lost their jobs.
People lost their jobs. Hills described the feeling bluntly, saying, "It's like we've been cut by a knife and we don't know how bad we're going to bleed or for how long." That uncertainty is absolutely paralyzing for these organizations, which are often lean operations themselves, just trying desperately to support their communities and honor their commitments to farmers.
And the loss of human capital, the expertise built up.
Exactly. That loss of expertise accumulated over years is a significant setback for regional food development.
And the situation for the Appalachia Regional Food Business Center, led by Paul Friedman, is equally precarious, though maybe in a slightly different stage.
Yeah.
They had already diligently selected 62 awardees for their first round of Business Builder grants, and had sent that list to the USDA for final approval back in early 2025.
62 projects ready to go.
Ready to go. These grants were for a diverse range of projects, including support for grain farmers wanting equipment to process their crops for more direct sales, and a unique business focused on processing pawpaws, that native regional fruit, into jams and purees. Now, all 62 of those grants are all in limbo, just awaiting a USDA green light that may never come.
Just hang in there.
Friedman points out these grants are time-sensitive. Changing equipment pricing, inflation, delays can erode the value of the awards or even make the proposed projects financially unfeasible down the line. He's also been forced to pause a planned second round of applications, dampening the hopes of hundreds more potential awardees. Moreover, he stopped paying 17 partner organizations for the technical assistance they were providing, fearing that, in his words, the longer it goes, at some point, more and more staff and more of those partners fall off.
The whole network starts to fray.
Precisely. The cumulative effect is a devastating loss of expertise, capacity, and critical momentum that took years to build. It further erodes the fragile infrastructure for local food systems in a region that desperately needs it.
Now, it is important to note, not all centers are facing the exact same immediate fate, which speaks to, I think, varying levels of institutional capacity and resilience among the grantees themselves. For instance, the Northwest and Rocky Mountain Regional Food Business Center, which is run by Colorado State University, they're actually managing to continue their work and honor contract payments to their subgrantees, even despite the current lack of USDA reimbursement.
So they're fronting the money.
Essentially, yeah. They're fronting the money, probably drawing from university reserves, hoping that federal funding will eventually resume. This highlights that while some organizations are being forced to lay off staff and halt operations entirely, others with stronger, larger institutional backing are attempting to weather the storm and keep their commitments, at least for now.
A real disparity.
It underscores the uneven impact of this decision across the country. It shows that not all communities have the same shock absorbers when federal support is abruptly withdrawn. And it poses a question, right? Does this mean the program only works where there's already significant institutional capacity? Or does it highlight the fragility of relying on temporary federal funding for long-term development, especially in less resourced areas?
And perhaps one of the most significant and maybe insidious long-term impacts of this entire situation is the profound erosion of trust. As we discussed earlier, a key aim of this program was explicitly to reach farmers and food businesses who historically had trouble accessing USDA programs, individuals and groups who might have previously felt excluded, marginalized, or even actively discriminated against by federal agencies.
Building bridges.
Exactly. This program was meant to be a bridge, a way to build rapport and demonstrate the USDA's commitment to supporting all segments of agriculture. Now, with the sudden pause, the prolonged confusion, and the eventual termination, many of those who are new to working with USDA grants, who have perhaps taken a leap of faith, are understandably demoralized. They feel betrayed. The trust that was painstakingly being built, a critical bridge between the agency and underserved agricultural communities, is now being severely undermined. As Sherry Lee Hills articulated, and her words are echoed across the country, confidence in the agency is plummeting. This isn't just about a single program. It's about the ability of the USDA to effectively engage and serve its constituents moving forward.
That sentiment, I don't think I'm ever going to apply for another USDA grant, voiced by Sherry Lee Hills. That's particularly troubling for an agency like the USDA. I mean, their core mission is to serve the agricultural community across the nation, ensuring food security, rural vitality. When the very people you're designed to help lose faith in your commitments, when they see contracts as potentially unreliable.
It creates a much larger, longer-lasting problem.
Exactly. Much bigger than just the termination of a single program. It makes it harder to implement any future initiatives, no matter how well-intentioned or how critical the need might be. It's an investment in relationship building that takes years to cultivate.
And can be destroyed so quickly.
Destroyed in a single administrative decision, leaving this deep scar of cynicism that can impede future progress, regardless of who is in office. So this whole situation brings us to a point of, well, competing narratives, and it forces us to look beyond the immediate political labels often applied to these kinds of decisions. Paul Friedman, the director of the Appalachia Regional Food Business Center, he made a really powerful argument about this that tries to cut through the partisan noise. He emphasized, if there ever is a program that really deserves bipartisan support across the spectrum, it's this program.
Strong claim.
Yeah, and he wasn't shy about articulating its core identity, adding, our middle name is business. He sees it as fundamentally economic, not political.
He further clarified that the program's core goal wasn't about, a particular political agenda, but rather foundational economic principles that benefit everyone. He said it's to help businesses bring food to market so that it's available at a fair price, and so that producers, processors, and farmers can actually make a living doing this.
Basic economics, really.
Right. Friedman believes that this kind of local, regional food system development inherently builds fundamental resilience, whether against a natural disaster, another recession, another, heaven forbid, a pandemic. It mitigates risks by diversifying supply chains, keeping more money circulating locally through multiplier effects, and empowering communities to feed themselves. His message was unequivocal. It isn't a blue or red issue. It speaks to the idea that supporting local economies and ensuring food security are, or should be, universal goals that transcend partisan divides. They directly benefit communities regardless of political affiliation or ideology. It's about empowering entrepreneurs and creating jobs values that typically resonate across the political spectrum.
And this really speaks to the strength of the model itself, which was its adaptability. That was a feature really lauded by practitioners on the ground. It allowed each region to develop unique solutions to unique problems, rather than imposing some rigid, one-size-fits-all federal template.
Which rarely works in agriculture.
Exactly. For example, in the Northeast, one center helped an Ohio orchard pivot into cider production to boost its revenue, using value-added processing. In the Pacific Northwest, another might have focused on developing cold storage solutions for diverse berry farms, and of course, building essential bison processing infrastructure on tribal lands in Minnesota, as we heard from Native Wise LLC, that was a crucial region-specific need.
Tailored support.
This flexibility was one of its most lauded features among those working on the ground, because it respected local expertise and acknowledged that the challenges, and therefore the solutions for food systems, vary dramatically from one part of the country to another. It wasn't about top-down directives, but really bottom-up empowerment.
Which raises an important question. How does this play out for specific communities, especially those historically underserved and often marginalized in mainstream agricultural systems? The National Intertribal Food Business Center, or NIFBC, was a significant integral component of this whole program. It was a $25 million center focused entirely on tribal producers and food businesses, representing a crucial collaboration between the Intertribal Agriculture Council, IAC, and partners like Ekiptian, a Native Community Development financial institution.
So dedicated funding and focus.
Absolutely. This wasn't just another grant. It was an intentional effort to address long-standing inequities, rebuild traditional foodways, and support food sovereignty within tribal nations, allowing them to control their own food systems and build economic prosperity on their own terms.
The NIFBC was actually one of the 8 centers that did manage to award grants, starting back in December 2024, before the official termination. This means, thankfully, it will have the option to manage those existing commitments through May 2026.
So those projects get to continue.
Yes, those specific ones. However, its remaining activities will be terminated. So, while some projects already funded will see their grants honored, the broader ongoing mission of the NIFBC, its capacity to provide new technical assistance, develop new partnerships, and crucially issue new grants for tribal food systems under this specific program, all of that is now halted.
So a mixed outcome.
Very much so. It's a bittersweet victory for the projects already underway, but a significant loss for the broader long-term goals of tribal food sovereignty that the center aimed to support.
Despite this significant setback, the Intertribal Agriculture Council statement reflects a powerful sense of resilience, a continued commitment that really speaks volumes about their long-term vision. They noted, while this USDA-funded phase of the NFBC is being scaled back, IAC's mission and our commitment to tribal food businesses is not ending.
They're not giving up.
Not at all. We are actively exploring ways to sustain and evolve this work through other avenues. This highlights an ongoing, deep-seated commitment to supporting tribal food systems, regardless of the federal backing for this particular program. It suggests these communities are determined to find other ways forward, philanthropic grants, maybe tribal self-funding, other partnerships, even when direct government support is withdrawn.
Oh, resourceful.
Incredibly. It's a testament to the inherent drive for food sovereignty and economic self-determination, and a powerful example of continued effort despite external challenges.
So as we connect all these dots, we're left with this striking, undeniable contrast. On one hand, we have the official USDA statement, emphasizing unsustainable financing, claiming the program should not have been established in this manner in the first place, implying a fundamental flaw in its conception.
The official line.
Right. This narrative suggests fiscal prudence and adherence to legislative intent as the driving forces behind the termination. On the other hand, we have the on-the-ground reality. Thriving partnerships abruptly disrupted. Small businesses like Native Wise LLC seeing grants that were supposed to be life or death put on indefinite hold, and a plummeting of trust among agricultural communities who felt they were finally being seen and supported.
Stark difference.
And crucially, we have those reports suggesting that some centers, the very ones immediately terminated for not awarding grants, were unable to do so precisely because of the funding freeze that began months before, effectively tying their hands before they could fully launch.
This presents a powerful tension, doesn't it? Between high-level policy adjustments, often driven by shifting political priorities, and the tangible human-level consequences felt by farmers, businesses, entire communities who are building concrete, localized economic solutions. The situation isn't just about one program. It's really a stark case study in the inherent tension between short-term political cycles and the long-term incremental work of building community resilience.
Yeah.
The core insight here, perhaps, is that when foundational initiatives, especially those designed to address systemic issues, are funded through temporary mechanisms or become symbols of a previous administration, they become inherently vulnerable to sudden political shifts, often leaving the most vulnerable stakeholders, small farmers, historically underserved communities, bearing the brunt of that uncertainty and that eroded trust.
They're caught in the middle.
Exactly. It forces us to question how sustainable, large-scale, bottom-up change can truly be when it's tied to fleeting legislative cycles and political priorities. And it highlights the immense challenge governments face in balancing fiscal responsibility with the direct support of vital community-level economic development that, by many accounts here, appear to be working quite effectively.
So today, we've taken a deep dive into the termination of the regional food business centers. We've explored the program's ambitious goals to fortify local food systems against consolidation and future shocks. We've seen its measurable successes and the very real human impact of its sudden halt. From farmers facing those life or death decisions for their businesses, to organizations grappling with layoffs and shattered trust, with some centers maybe unable to even disperse grants due to that pre-existing funding freeze. This whole complex situation leaves us with a provocative thought for you to consider. How do we, as a society, as citizens, navigate the tension when broad, high-level policy shifts, driven by changes in administration or fiscal philosophies, clash so directly and forcefully with these on-the-ground initiatives? Initiatives that were explicitly designed to build resilience, foster economic vitality, and address long-standing inequities in our communities. And what does this particular case tell us about the future of government support for localized, bottom-up efforts in a rapidly changing world? A world where the need for adaptive and resilient systems is only growing more urgent.
Thanks for listening to the Daily Market Share podcast. If you like what you heard, you can check out more stories like this one at www.agroecology.ucsc.edu or on our YouTube, so please subscribe to our channel. By the way, if you rate and share this podcast, it will help other people discover it. So please don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. This story was produced by UC Santa Cruz Center for Agroecology in partnership with USDA's Southwest Regional Food Business Center. We hope that the information that we provided is helpful for all of our small producers in the state of California. I'm Hector Ruiz Calderon Victoria, and I want to give a special thanks to our center staff team, including Tim Gallardo for editing and production advising and support. I also wanted to give a big thanks to all the journalists and sources whose thought-provoking articles informed this episode. We know our listeners care deeply about staying informed on the current political climate, and we truly value the insight and depth these contributors brought to this conversation, so thank you. All of the individuals represented come from different skills and knowledge and are from different geographies around Northern California's 14 sub-regions near the coast and different areas of concern in the agricultural business sector. Disclaimer, the view, thoughts, and opinion expressed are the speaker's own and do not represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of the University of California or of the U.S. Department of Agriculture. The materials and information presented here is for general information purposes only. The University of California name in all forms and abbreviation are the property of its owner, and its use does not imply endorsement of or opposition to any specific organization, product, or service.